So let's kind of talk about where I think we're headed here in the fourth quarter. If we look at the stats for the end of September, what we typically see right around this time of year is a slowdown in new properties hitting the market. We just refer to those as new listings. And if you look at the stats in the Tri-County area of Charleston, we have now had 2 consecutive months of fewer homes being put on the market than the month prior. We had about 2,100 homes hit the market in July, and then in August we had about 1,900, and in September a little over 1,700. That does tend to follow the seasonality of our market, especially as it relates to properties hitting the market. And so we're going to talk about a little later on in the show, if you're a buyer, how does that impact you, especially in a market where there's not much for sale anyways? And then as a seller, does that mean that you wait until the spring when there's more activity? I think that's a myth. I'm going to debunk that here in just a little while. I'll give you some reasons why. If we look at properties that are going under contract, which we refer to as pending sales, we've had we've stayed fairly consistent since, let's call it April. We put almost 1,900 properties under contract in April in our market. And then it's been kind of slowly dipping down. Now we're at around 1,700, but still we are doing better than even peak months in years prior. In May of 2019, as an example, which was the peak for putting homes under contract in that year, we put almost 1,600 homes under contract. So here we are, where in September we put 1,700 homes under contract. So still a very hot market. I'm not expecting this market to turn on a dime. There's still issues with inventory. There's still high demand among buyers. It's still causing price increases. It's still causing bidding wars. And if you look at the number of homes that are actually selling or closing, those numbers kind of tend to track with seasonality in the market as well. We peaked out in June. We put a little over 2,000 closings on the books in June, and we've been kind of steadily going down. Now in September, we were under 1,500. And just as a reference point, we put 1,733 closings in September last year, and then prior to that, in September of 2019, it was 1,100. So we still have this big just backlog of buyers. The great reshuffling of society. That we've got people that can work from home. A lot of people have the freedom to do that. They're choosing to move to locations that they actually want to live, as opposed to having to live there to commute to work. And obviously with Charleston being what it is, and all of the positive press that we've received for, who knows how many years now, about being just a fantastic place to live or retire. We have people coming here not just for that, but it's a favorable state for taxation for businesses. A bunch of reasons why people are moving to Charleston. And then, of course, we look at things like inventory, actual number of homes available for sale in relation to how many homes we're putting under contract. We call that month supply of inventory. And at least in the resale market, if I exclude new construction, we're still under a month supply of inventory. So in other words, if nothing else hit the market, we'd be sold out of inventory in a month. That's not necessarily what that means, but it's a pretty good frame of reference. Whereas if you look at this time last year, we had 4 months supply of inventory, and we've been kind of harboring around that 4-month supply of inventory for a few years prior to that. But obviously in the beginning of really March of last year was when things started to really go down. We had 3.5 months supply of inventory in March of 2020, which we all remember is when we got the stay-at-home orders based on COVID. And then things really just plummeted from there, and we kind of hit the bottom in spring of this year, and we've stayed there. It's an unhealthy statistic or metric, so to speak, because it's not a balanced market. It's very much in favor of sellers. So that's why we're seeing prices go through the roof. I mean, if I look at the median sales price, we are up 11.5% from this time last year. This time, September of last year, just as a frame of reference, our median sales price in the Charleston Tri-County area was $299. Now we're at $333,500. So median sales price is going up. If I look at the average, it's a little lower, 5.5%. But if I look at price per square foot, which is an interesting way of kind of looking at things, the increase is 15% compared to this time last year. So properties are taking just a number of days to sell. The median days on market is 4 days. It has been under 10 for every month this year, with the exception of January, where it took 13 days to put a property under contract. So still a very hot market. There's still a lot of activity out there. We're continuing to see, properties that we put on the market being sold very quickly with a lot of interest. And I'm going to talk a little bit later on about how important it is to not get lazy as a real estate agent in a market like this. I think there's this preconceived notion that, sellers don't really need to do much, or agents don't need to do much to market their homes. The home will sell itself. There's so many buyers out there that they can't afford to be picky, and they'll just deal with whatever they can get. We're going to talk more about that because there's a big issue there, because believe it or not, there are still plenty of homes that are not selling or taking much longer to sell, or are reducing their price more than they would initially have needed to had they had a better strategy when they put the property on the market. So, we've got a great market going on locally. The other thing that I think we really need to keep an eye on here, which I've been talking about for, at least 2 years on this program, is just affordability. So much of our market hinges on what happens with mortgage interest rates. Right now, 2/3 of homeowners with mortgages have rates that are locked in below 4%. So there was this big financial incentive, at some point in the past. I'd have to look back at the trend on mortgage rates, but if we remember back when interest rates were at 5% and then they dropped, now all of a sudden, folks can go and buy a larger home, and because of a lower interest rate, afford a bigger, better place for the same amount of money. Well, now I think at some point in the near future, we're going to start to experience the opposite of that. We already know that in the affordable section of the market, the first-time home buyer market, there is so much demand that those properties are still going to continue to be absorbed. But we also know that as interest rates increase, more and more people are going to get priced out of the market. You couple the increase in interest rates with the increase in sales price, and of course you ask yourself the question, well, are wages increasing at a level consistent with how much it costs to afford a home? The same thing is going on, by the way, in the rental market. It's tough. You have to pay a pretty penny to rent a property, especially in Charleston. So if you look at the fact that 2/3 of homeowners that have mortgages are locked in under 4%, and 54 of them are locked in under 3.75%, what do we think is going to happen when those interest rates start to creep up? Because, can we all just agree at this point that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, right? You can't put as much money into circulation as we have and not expect at some point in the future to have it get paid back in the form of increase in interest rates. And right now, the Federal Reserve is the biggest purchaser of mortgage-backed securities in the secondary mortgage market. The government is basically the biggest purchaser of mortgages. When they start to taper that off and true capitalism comes back to play, those rates are going to go up. A 1% increase in interest rates is the equivalent of almost a 15% increase in monthly payment. So you couple that with the fact that we're at double-digit appreciation numbers. In some markets, my goodness, it's 20+%. So you can see how these people are going to start getting priced out of the market. It's also going to disincentivize some people to make that move. It's also going to push people out of those move-up markets, those luxury markets. The luxury markets are usually the markets that get hit first because it becomes less financially attractive to them. For a lot of folks that purchase luxury property, it's a want, not a need. So it'll be interesting to see how things play out, come spring of next year. But we're already starting to see a little bit of a tick up in interest rates, and it's just interesting to watch how the media handles this. I saw a report earlier yesterday that the interest rate was at 3.15%, and they were just blowing it up as if it was this catastrophic event. Which is why I think you need to be really careful with the media outlets that you research and use to form your opinion of what's happening in the market, whether it be nationally, regionally, or locally. I'm going to actually reference something here coming up that, again, is just it just rubs me the wrong way. So I'm going to get to that in just a little bit. In fact, we're going to take a little break. When we come back, I'm going to talk about selling your home in the fourth quarter, selling your home in the fall and winter months. What does that mean? What should you be thinking of doing if the plan is to sell at some point in the next, let's call it 90 days? So stick around. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. And remember, if you want to reach out to me to talk more about your situation, you want to work with the top realtor in the area, my number is 843-400-8009. That's 843-400-8009. Or check me out online, listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Stick around. We'll be right back.
It's the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. Broadcast Saturday mornings at 9 and Sunday mornings at 10 on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA.